this is a unique place. We found there 12 pillars at the foot of the mountain, as it is described in the Bible.
So, Dr. Anati, do you find the Bible trustworthy?
I find it, first of all, a marvelous book.
Wow. Nice.
Wonderful to be studied, to be read, that awakens imagination, and it is a great book.
Hello everyone, welcome to NT Podcast. My name is Emmanuel Anati. Today we have a great archaeologist, Dr. Emmanuel Anati. Dr. Anati, welcome, and how are you?
Thank you.
Okay, so you are 93 years old, am I correct?
More or less.
Yeah. So yes. How do you feel about this? How is your health?
Very nice.
Nice. Oh.
Very, yes. Working.
Great. I'm happy about that. So today we are going to talk about Har Karkom and archaeological discoveries on the Holy Mountain. Dr. Anati, can you explain us where is Mount Sinai? What are archaeological discoveries at Har Karkom?
Well, we were very much interested in this mountain, and we worked on the survey of this mountain, which is in the Negev desert. It is the Israeli part of the Sinai desert, and we found there an immense number of places of worship, altars, little shrines, standing stones, and all sorts of ritual elements that created some curiosity, because this is a unique place where such quantity of remains from the Bronze Age were found in the entire Sinai. And we worked there for several years until suddenly came the idea that this might be the biblical Mount Sinai. The material remains that suggested that are just a few elements that correspond to the biblical narration. For instance, the presence of 12 pillars at the foot of the mountain, as it is described in the Bible, that Moses came up early in the morning and built an altar and 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel at the foot of the mountain. Or the presence of rock art that refers to worship of an invisible being, some sort of people worshipping with the upraised hands, and above them a sort of cloud, which is something quite exceptional, because in prehistoric times, usually the worship is addressed to an object or to an anthropomorphic figure, but not to a cloud. And there are a few other things like that. Also, there are figures in the rock art that simply seem to represent the biblical account. But all this can be found in the books that have been published, the Mountain of God, and then more recently the riddle of Mount Sinai, and ultimately Exodus between myth and history. Now, all these material things demanded some verification, so that this put us into a research of the geographical history from the biblical account what can be understood about the locality of Mount Sinai. And we found many details in the Bible that correspond to the location of Har Karkom. For instance, there is a story about Moses that goes to live in the land of Midian. And the land of Midian is about the Araba Valley, if you have a map in front of you. And when he goes back to Egypt, his way is he stops at the mountain of God, at Mount Sinai. That means that Mount Sinai is somewhere between Egypt and the Araba Valley, which is exactly the location of Har Karkom. Then there are other elements of geographical history, like the location of the two tribes that contended themselves a well, which was the last step, Refidim, which was the last step before reaching Mount Sinai, according to the biblical account. And the location of the two tribes, which is the Amalekites and the Midianites, are very well described in the Bible. And the border between these two tribes appears to be exactly where Har Karkom is located. So there are many elements in the Bible that confirm the location of Mount Sinai in the place of Har Karkom. And to this subject of geographical history, an entire book was dedicated, The Riddle of Mount Sinai, which can be found in Amazon and in the internet and everywhere. And then the last book is Exodus, Between Myth and History, and it is a fantastic book describing what the Bible tells us about the itinerary from Egypt to the Holy Land, the ages of the Hebrew tribes in the desert, which is a fantastic story. It is something fascinating, and there are many details in this story that tell us not just about the location of Mount Sinai, which is very important for our purpose, but also the ideas, the habits, the way of thinking of the people during this period in the desert, which finds many parallels to the shrines and standing stones and other monuments we found in this area. The book on these monuments of the Bronze Age is in Italian, but it is well documented, and what is important there, all the photographs of these elements give an idea of the immense dedication of these people to the worship, to the cult, to the rituals. And this is an element that kept together these tribes during a period of the desert, in the desert, which is, according to what we think, much, much longer than the 40 years mentioned in the Bible. It is perhaps much longer because too many events took place in this period. And then comes the question about Moses, how Moses could have lived for 5 generations. Is the Moses in Egypt at the court of Pharaoh the leader of the tribes in the desert, the fighter that conquered the sites in Transjordan, are these different people or it is just one person? And we believe that Moses is just the name of a series of leaders that succeeded each other in the course of several generations during this epoch, which is also epic, which is the traveling of the Hebrew people from Egypt to the Holy Land.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Anati. This was great. So I have a few questions about this. Can I ask you something?
Please.
Okay. So James Hofmeyr wrote that early critic was with Israel Finkelstein, and he said that because the type of early Bronze Age cultic installations discovered at Har Karkom have also been found in significant numbers in the South Desert, like Negev and Sinai. So Anati's findings are not unique. How you respond on this one?
I think that it is correct in a way. There are two aspects. First of all, there are sites of this period because people wandered in the desert. We know from the Bible that there were different tribes, the Edomites, the Amalekites, the Midianites. All these tribes lived in the same area in the desert. Therefore, they produced the same material culture, which is quite natural. It is not only the Hebrew lived there. We know from the Bible that there were many tribes living around. So it is natural that similar material is found in different places. But what is not correct is the fact that he speaks, these critics speak only of material culture, of pottery, and of the flint implements. They don't speak about monuments. But Har Karkom is the only place where so many monuments of worship were found, which means that Har Karkom was a major center of religious activities during the Bronze Age, which is well corresponding to the idea of Mount Sinai.
Yes, I remember Deaver was asking you at conference, and you respond that this mountain is unique. So I agree. So is it true that you believed in South Sinai location, Mountain of God, earlier, based on ecological factors?
No.
No. Okay.
No. I don't identify myself with this view.
Okay. Okay. So another problem. They say that if this mountain marks the place where Israel received the tablets with the 10 commandments, in what language would they have been written between 2200 and 2000 BC? The Canaanite alphabet script from which the Hebrew script borrowed was about 1800s, I believe, BC.
Yes, you see, this question shows the different way of thinking between me and this other person. What I say, I never said that God gave the 10 commandments on the mountain. This is a myth. What I said, that Har Karkom is the place that the Bible refers to as Mount Sinai. If there were miracles there or not, is the matter of theologians. I'm not dealing with that. You see, so if somebody asked me in which language it was done, I think it is a ridiculous question. it is a question, a childish question, because I'm not dealing with the fact that was that a revelation or not revelation, was there I don't even know if Moses ever existed. But my point is that the Har Karkom is the place which the Bible refers to as Mount Sinai. If there were there miracles, if God appears with his beard on the top of the mountain, is not my business. Yeah. So they are mixing up different things.
Okay, thank you. So here is one Egyptologist that like your view, and he agrees with you. So he says
there are many people that agree with my view.
Oh, nice.
And many more are growing. You see, this at the beginning there was a refusal.
Yeah.
For every new idea, first people say no, and then they start thinking. Now more and more people agree with me, and we wait and see. I think that in a few years everybody will agree with what I say. But there are people that have old-fashioned minds, and they have some difficulties in accepting new ideas.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. So this is Dr. Hub Pragt, if you know him. So he says like this: I'm aware that Dr. Anati in his book Esodo tra mito e estona assumes that Exodus took place between 24th and 21st century BC. So early Bronze Age for the Table Mountain Har Karkom must have been a special meeting place for nomadic tribes from the Median area during that period. It was also a place where the moon god was worshipped. This does not rule out that Israelites camped at the foot of this traditional mountain of worship in a much later period, namely the Late Bronze Age, more specifically Late Bronze 2B, so without adding new representation of idols on the rock walls. Does Dr. Anati rule this out?
Yes, I will explain you why. Because the Late Bronze Age does not exist in the Sinai. It was a very dry period in which people did not live there. There is not a single find in Sinai that can prove the presence of tribal life in the Late Bronze Age. There are only stations, government stations, military stations, and there is no life, tribal life in the Bronze Age, because the age was very dry. So all these alternatives that are proposed cannot do not consider the entire association of all the objects. You see, if the climate does not allow people to live there, you cannot discuss if there were people or were not people. Simply tribal life could not exist there. There were only military stations. This is one point. The second point is the big difficulty that people have in accepting my chronology, my dating, because they have been used to think in terms of an easy solution. But if you think that to build a town like Ramses, that was told in the Bible that was built by the Israeli or Hebrew slaves, the building of a town like that takes generations. So if all that should enter into the 50 years between the start building of this town and the Exodus, the time doesn't make sense. We have to consider a very longer time for the biblical narration, which is not something that took place in one generation. It took place during a long period, and this can be easily reconstructed, as I do in the book Exodus Between Myth and History. The timing of what happened is something that people have ignored. They think that to building a town is 1 year, and traveling of an entire group of 12 tribes throughout the desert took 40 days. This is out of mind. It is not something realistic. So I think that what I try to do is to give a realistic view on the biblical history. And I think that this is an important contribution to the history and also to the origins of the monotheistic religions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Anati. Another thing that Dr. Hub Bragt said, if Har Karkom is Horeb, which I do believe it is, I wonder if Dr. Anati has done research on the route and the stops that precede and follow the first stop at the Holy Mountain. I am very curious about this because I have clearly mapped out all these places, in my opinion, in a correct way. I am curious whether Dr. Anati would be interested in exchanging thoughts about this with me in a conversation.
Of course, I will be delighted. It will be a great pleasure.
Okay, nice. Do you see connection between Har Karkom and the word Horeb, maybe?
Well, Horeb,
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. There is, the name Horeb means Harev. That means in a way of destruction. And if you look at the photographs of Har Karkom in my book, you will see that there are parts of Har Karkom. On the edges of Har Karkom, there are many breaks, there are many cracks. And while we were staying there for work, every night we were hearing first big cloud noises of people of the mountain that were falling down. So this is something that gives this explanation of the name Horeb. Horeb means in the way of destruction, and the mountain is in the process of being destructed. After 5,000 years, it is still going on, this process of destruction of the mountain.
Wow, nice. So, do you have also conclusion between lunar god Sin and word Sinai?
Well, Sinai means the mountain of sin, and the god Sin is the god of the moon. So this is obvious that the origin of Mount Sinai, or the name at least, is related to the moon. But you know that many churches today are built on top of Roman temples. And this is the way it happens all the time. Holy places are just moving from one religion to the other. The place remains holy, but the religions change. And this is what happened also in Har Karkom. It was first I don't know what, and then at a certain moment it was the god, the mountain of the moon, and then it became the mountain of a monotheistic god. So it is different changes, different presence of cult in the same mountain.
Okay, great. So how you draw a conclusion and the relation between moon god, Sin, and Yahweh, monotheism and similar?
I think it is probably people don't want me to say that, but I think that Yahweh was first, was a development of the god of the moon. It started as a god of the moon in Aram Naharaim, in the place where the patriarchs are believed to have originated, and then gradually there was a development into a different god, which is Yahweh, the god of the Hebrews.
Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Anati, do you find the Bible as a whole trustworthy, or how you look at the Bible?
No, I find it, first of all, a marvelous book.
Wow,
nice. Wonderful to be studied, to be read, that awakens imagination, and it is a great book. Second, I think that it is the source of truth. But the problem is that people today don't know how to read that, don't know how to interpret that. And this is what I try to do in my books. I try to understand the meaning of the Bible. The Bible is the biggest bestseller in the world. There is no other book that has been so much read and translated in so many languages. And there is a reason for that, because it is an incredible literary creation. And of course, it is something that you cannot just read and understand it on the spot. You have to understand the background. And the background is knowing the geography, is knowing the places the Bible is talking about, is knowing also the way of thinking of the people at the age in which the Bible is referring to. So it is not a simple book that you can read and understand everything on the spot. It is a tremendous book, a fantastic book that has to be studied and understood.
Amazing. Thank you for this answer. This is great. So, can I ask you a last question about your personal belief? How you define yourself? Are you a Christian? Are you a theist, or what?
Well, I have my own beliefs. What I say, I can say that I don't belong to any denomination.
Okay.
I have my own way of thinking, and I try not to be brainwashed by ideas that are already prepared before me. I try to think with my head.
Nice. So do you believe in God? Can you say that?
Well, I have my own belief in God.
Okay.
I don't believe in the old man with the beard that looks at you from the sky.
Yeah.
But I have my own belief of God.
Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Anati, this is all of questions. Thank you for this interview, and I'm thankful for this opportunity to talk with you. And this was great.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. All the best.
All the best. Bye bye.